All right. Once again, we have the one and only Sevan Bomar with us. Sevan, what's the name of the new website? I know it's not resistance2010.com anymore.
Yeah, it's definitely AstroQuest, but you can still get us at resistance2010.com. But yeah, we're at astroquest.com now. Makes it a little bit easier.
Excellent, excellent. So many things going on in the world right now, so many strange energies. I don't even know where to begin, so why don't you take us away?
Oh, man. Well, first I wanted to say thanks for having me on the show. Obviously, today we're doing a simulcast, so that's kind of new, right? But it's just one of those things I think that it's going to take two networks to hold today's message. And that's the transmission that I got through, because really what I have to introduce today is really massive. And that's why I personally chose to bring it on radio, because I didn't really want to have that uncomfortability of the camera, like being in front of my face. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and switch over my camera really briefly.
Oh, it's very difficult. I mean, we did the video cast for a couple of weeks. I think a couple of months, actually. You were one of the guests that did a video cast with us. I think it turned out great, except for it was so much work after the fact, rendering the videos, doing all that, getting set up, that it was just, the radio was much more efficient to deliver the messages.
For sure, because also when you're in front of the camera and you're trying to channel that message to reach people, and then you're also trying to make sure your lips are not chapped and you don't sleep in your eye, or you may who knows what's going on in the background sometimes. So just that whole thing is sometimes what I'm not always in favor of when it comes to, like I said, just connecting with everyone on the radio waves and getting to what needs to be heard, because obviously we have mental powerhouses, spiritual powerhouses, physical powerhouses on the planet, and it's just about still asking them the right questions, though, because I'm sure they could sit down for hours and just talk about something that's even on the surface of what they do. But the goal is not for me to sit here and just give everyone a conversation about what I'm doing in my life and how great that is for me, but actually to jump right into this from a level of getting the real answers that you can actually see the truth connected to once you look into your physical reality. And so I first want to talk about, first this message I want to dedicate to the children that are experiencing the result of what can be seen as unhindered, unbalanced energy. And my heart and the rest of my chakras and my organs go out to them. And I feel like if I could focus my mind on that, meaning doing it for someone else, then I can always be in this. But the moment that I start to attempt to do it for myself is the moment that people may not see me anymore. And I'll just say it like that, because the true energy that is connected with keeping a person not only physically sound, but also spiritually strong, because, we're in this war in many senses that is spiritual. And so you can't see it with your physical eyes. So, and it goes in your mind and goes in the mind of other people. So you'll witness weird responses from individuals that you've held really close to you. You'll witness emotional disturbances, meaning that in many cases, every time there's a full moon cycle, or every time there's a time in which I would say the celestial bodies are causing more magnetic tension for whatever reason, then you find people going up and down like roller coasters in their attitudes.
Oh, it has been crazy for me, Sevan. I mean, I am clinically bipolar now because of the information that we look into. I'll wake up in the morning, I'm ready to go, and then I start reading through articles, and I want to do nothing but lay on the couch because I get so depressed as to what's going on. If I didn't know any better, I would pop a bunch of pills and go on with my day, but I know better, and so I'm trying to fight that. But deep in this information, it's hard to not get depressed, not get sucked down in that negative energy. What do we do?
Yeah, I definitely want to be able to give people that are in that situation, because I've definitely been in that situation myself, the right formula to push through, because what you're really dealing with is a grand story. So I need to kind of explain it first, and then we can get into solutions, because solutions are always available for the problem. But I want to start, just as with everything, we kind of continue from where we left off last time. If people need to kind of get abreast of some of the things that we're going to talk about today, you may need to to go and look at the body of information that's already been provided for you in the past, some of the past shows, etc. But this is a continuation. I'm sure there's many people that are listening on the line waiting to get the next transmission, and so we're going to go right into that. The first thing I want everyone to consider first is that the as above, so below nature to everything really corresponds to how our body is designed, how our planet is designed, and how our immediate universe is designed. There is an entwining and a connection there. What you now would have to do is you would have to go on every single level. If you wanted to be in full control, you would have to go on every single level and figure out how every single correspondence connects. When you want to see what's going on around you and what's happening to everyone, you need to find other correspondences. Or if you find something to be true, you should start to connect that with higher levels of where that truth is also self-evident. So the part of the truth that's self-evident is about what exactly is going on here with our species and the wars and the conflicts, just the emotion. And as I always say, even just recently, that if you're constantly fighting with someone, even if it's a loved one, then you guys are enemies, because according to the definition of enemy is that you fight your enemy. So if you are really looking to have a real relationship with someone, then you cannot be fighting and arguing with that person. But if you are, then you need to figure out how to come to some level of neutrality, some type of agreement between you and this other species. And to do that, though, you would have to look at the root of why conflict, fighting, and even fear even came into place. And this has a lot to do with scarcity. It has a lot to do with the ancient story that has been taking place on this planet, just right in front of us. It's hidden in plain sight, I always say, but we're failing to interpret it. And what that's about is the lost continents. Okay? Now, many people have already uncovered the information about that there are cities and monuments under the sea. Okay? But sometimes they never ask themselves, but where are the people that used to live there? Because if you understand how the world works, everyone has their own territory. You have China, you have India, you have America, you have Africa, right? But what happens when your continent sinks? Let's say Africa starts to sink. And then the Africans leave the island of Africa and then start going into other places. How are those other places going to receive the Africans? And we can say this for any continent. Let's say it's Britain. Britain, as an island, sinks. The British bail out, and they see it sinking, and they start going into other places. But who do those places belong to? You see what I mean? And how are they welcomed? Are they welcomed to say, oh, hey, brother, we know your island sunk, so you can come and stay with us? Or are they coming to even conquer because they're just in a desperation of finding a new home?
Well, in a perfect world, they would be accepted. I mean, we're all humans, and that's what I've always believed, that we have a right to travel anywhere in the world, but a lot of people don't see it that way.
Right. I mean, definitely not, because if you've lost your home and your children are actually the ones that are hungry and need food and things, you may not go in there and just ask everyone whether you can actually come in and live to the level of life that you were living. You may take it. Now you're getting to the story of Atlantis. Because if you remember, the tale is that the Atlanteans' island was sunk because of things that they were participating in on their island. Now, I'll give a person a greater insight on this. When you do something as a continent, that's your nation, that's your family, that's your village, but it's big now. When you make moves and you do things, your temperament will determine the geological stance of the land that you live in, meaning that the hot temper of those who live in the Arab countries and the chakra in which they're centered in because of the entity that they believe in is like fire. So thus, it's not a surprise that their territory is a desert. You see what I mean? So the same thing with Atlantis. If you're getting involved in basically hyperdimensional manipulation, and then you crack into the fusion and basically implosion and explosion, if you attempt to use that kind of power in what we would just call now a negative way, then the repercussions of that is you may be removed. So now you get to a story about a group of men from a very advanced tribe. Some say they were from the stars, but we all have origins in the stars. What was their origins on the planet? And I'm telling you that their origins are many of these places that you are now seeing under the ocean. There's not just Atlantis. There are several colonies that pyramids were in, especially, that are now underwater. So what I'm trying to get everyone to see here is that the reason why people have no memory now is because there was a situation that took place that the only solution became to just wipe everyone's memory. And you will see this with the two most common situations that you'll run into with the person that you're trying to walk through their chakra system, but you're running into many different blocks that are very difficult for a person to remove. And those are, one, child abuse. Child abuse causes holes in the person's aura. The child's aura is punctured at that point. And then that allows a point for all of the other spiritual experiences and entities and things that they face through the rest of their life to enter. You'll also see that another one of the greatest things that a person will face when you're trying to talk and to try to get them into knowing. Excuse me, I'm looking at two sets of notes here, but let me just bring it into what I really want to say here. When you're looking at our bodies, and then when you're trying to analyze, why are we sick? Why are we angry? Why are we maybe not accelerating the way that we should? You have to first look also around you at the earth. And then you also have to look at our history. And if your history is not there because it's been wiped, then you will find yourself in a state of, I don't know what's going on. So now imagine you got a lot of people on a planet, which is what's happening now. And you ask the person next to you, do you know why we're here? Do you know where we came from? And they don't have an answer. And you go across the street, you do the same thing to the next person. Nobody knows where we came from. Are you not living in something like a dream world then? Something where there's basically just shadows walking around. They're just mumbling and acting out, but nobody even knows what they're doing. And how do these things come about? So what I want to take you into here is I want to take you into seeing that you have organizations here on the planet that their continent, their landmass is gone. And now, between their places that they've taken on land versus their ultimate domain, which is on the sea, which is why they use maritime law, they are constantly launching bombardments against those who live basically on land and on territories. And this includes you, it includes me, it includes Israelis, it includes Palestinians, it includes everyone. Because obviously if your landmass is not there anymore for whatever reason, you had to do something to cause it not to be there. And that would be called a destruction of a planet. So I want everyone to see that the land masses that are sunk are also synonymous with the planets that have been destroyed. So now when you fast forward into this, you'll find why I call today's show Weapon Worship. Because there is something that we learn how to do that led to why our memories are erased. And this is the conflicts that we get into with each other that turn into us cursing one another. That's the thing I meant to mention earlier. Excuse me. It's child abuse and curses, believe it or not. You'll find the most difficult thing to move from a person that you're trying to walk through the 6th and 7th chakra. And the curses came about through these same kind of conflicts that when you don't get along with someone and then you get very upset, you can actually create a thought even that attacks that person. That's called a psychic attack. Okay? Now, we're living in a future where hundreds of thousands of years later, after Babylonian magic, Egyptian magic, Persian magic, Chaldean magic, American magic, witchcraft, voodoo, you have more schools of dark thought than you have schools of balanced thought, right? And so when you ask yourself then, well, if there is some kind of entities or spirits that could come to do my bidding, why not send them to do something good? This is the question that you would always ask someone who's delving into magic. You ask them, well, if you're always trying to curse something or trying to gain illegally or ahead of others, I want to win the lottery, I want to be lucky, I want that girl to like me, then you have to look at what kind of energies are being enlisted to do that. And now you'll get to that when you have a territory that has been destroyed, if you had a God, which everyone has a supreme being concept, you are then going to pray to that God for them to give you victory over your enemies. This is the prayer that you even see that people are praying against you now. If you go to in church, they say, God, help us against the sinners. And so who is defining this catch-all of sinners? This is, of course, anyone who's basically not in the church. So you have people of the same species using spiritual energies to attack other people, and they're not even aware that that's what they're doing. Okay, so we're going to get into this deeper as it unfolds, because obviously I had to unwind from even today's mad rush of trying to hook up all the equipment just so we can do today's show. I want everyone to know that I can broadcast this for 3 hours today. That's my max here. But in this conversation, it'll take me a moment to gather all the information and then bring it to you. So however many times that will need to take place, then I'm available for that. But I have a good feeling that we're going to be able to get through this relatively fast. So what I want to say here is that we now have something of an alliance taking place. This alliance really has one common interest: to prevent the devastation of our planet. You have many different kind of beings, even ones that you cannot see, that live on other vibratory frequencies, and they live in this one, but just as another kind of life form. They are now rendering assistance for anyone that can prevent the devastation of this planet. And this is why it becomes a common initiative. Because if we're all on this harmonic frequency, it's like a band. I can go either to Bali and live on that frequency, or I can go to Swats and live on that frequency, right? Every place in the world is a different frequency, and if you can make it to that frequency, you can live a state of life that is harmonic with that frequency you've just got on. So if at any point that this entire bridge of frequency breaks, then all of the entities that are on it come falling down.
Seven, let's take a quick bottom of the hour break. Again, commercial free for you, ladies and gentlemen out there. So we will be right back, and quick little inspiring clip instead of the commercials this week. We are back. Sevan Bomar is our guest. And Sevan, before the break, you were talking about relationships, arguing with each other and whatnot. And I found that Cherie and I have been experiencing a lot of bumps lately. And I know exactly what it's a result of. It's a result of both of us being in constant pain. I was in a car accident about a year ago, and I'm still recovering from that. And I had no idea at the time how it was going to change my life. I mean, constant pain, and some days are better than the other, but I wake up with these excruciating migraines sometimes. She's been dealing with chronic pain all of her life, and it seems like a lot of her situations, which are physical, they are like literally like bones out of alignment and weird things like that, are causing her a lot of pain. And so as a result, we are interacting with each other from that pain basis. But when you've got pain, like in both of our cases, where it's a physical pain, in my case, I think that one of the nerves in my neck sometimes gets squashed or pressed or whatever, and it causes these horrible migraines. In her case, right now, one of her vertebrae is out of alignment, and it's just causing her tremendous pain. And of course, it's something that I don't want to mess with, because it's the vertebrae, it's the spine. It's not something that I can just pop back into place like I pop her shoulder back into place or whatever. When that comes out of place, I mean, I'm very weary of messing with that myself. But what do we do in a situation like this? I mean, you know, chiropractic and things like that, of course we do, but I know a lot of people out there are dealing with chronic pain, and it seems like the energies are just very, very dense, especially in this day and age.
Well, yeah, I mean, the first thing is that you would have to basically use the methods that, I'm getting a little bit of reverb here, but you would have to use the methods that were basically based on fixing a situation like that. And realistically, you would have to transcend kind of just a standard going to the doctor or taking a couple pain pills, etc. And I think that that's also relative to the conversation today, because we have to ask ourselves, you know, why are we actually experiencing any kind of pain, heartaches, turmoil, troubles, etc., that we cannot fix for ourselves. And what has left us somewhat inadequate to be able to do that. And what you'll really get to is you'll get first to this division. And that's why I really want to tell people today, like this division, if you're able to map out two planetary energies, just two of them here, you'll have the sea and you'll have land. And you have to understand that that's basically two different kingdoms. That's just like we're living on land, but there's a lot of animals and entities and things that are in the ocean. Okay, so if there's not a harmonic, meaning that the ocean stops at a certain point, right? There's a shoreline. But if there's not a harmonic in your body between the balances or a shoreline or a pole that you know how to gravitate to in your body, if you don't know how to line yourself up, then the body is basically taking astral damage. And so when you find yourself hit or in a collision, it's because another celestial body ran into you, i.e. a person in their own car or ark. Right? And then they now come into collision with you because there's something about their frequency and your frequency that have matched, but it's more like a free radical, okay, where they both slam into each other. Now, this gets us into this whole thing, and I'm glad, you just brought it back to center on this because it gets into the discovery of collision. The ultimate discovery of collision, because what you dealt with in the past is if you were experiencing some kind of ailment, then Kundalini was used to help you with that ailment. If you were experiencing some kind of spiritual issue, then Kundalini would help you with that issue. Our planet has been, in every sense, raped. It is the child abuse that I'm talking about that is in the back of the memory that we've been altered from. There has been a situation that has occurred that has taken us offline. So thus, we don't have Kundalini anymore. That's why you have broken pyramids in the broken grid system that's on this planet. And so then our physical elements start to hamper down on us. And then obviously our spiritual element is the one that took place first. So when you're coming to actually restore that, you have to make that agreement within your body. As it say, as above, so below. So that means what you're eating is basically going to be fed to what is below, meaning your intestines and the rest of your body. So the mouth or the higher kingdom will go to war with the lower kingdom of your body by simply putting in a sandwich with mayonnaise and bread and yeast and a ton of bacteria that accumulate within the body. So that way you don't have the actual energy or the hearth that is necessary to burn off the impurities, because how your body originally works is like a perpetual system. It creates a fire right in the gonads or in the area where your growing is, and then that fire burns up all the impurities that your body is putting in. But obviously you don't want to purposely put impurities and toxins in your body, and that's how there becomes a relationship. So what we're dealing with here is, now remember, if you're experiencing this on the physical, you're also experiencing this on the spiritual. So it's almost easier to see it there, that our entire planet is now at a point where there's some decisions that need to be made, because there is something that is knocking on the door of other beings. And I will explain that because I have that in my notes. When you get explosions and bombs, if you read about the procedures and you read about the metals and you see the chain reactions, you'll find that that diagram itself has been taken directly from how Kundalini works on an implosive level. Meaning that the energy system that you have to continuously regenerate yourself is a hydrogen imploder. So once the Nazis marched into Tibet and to the rest of the places to sequester the books, the Upanishads, the Puranas, and these books that contain spiritual knowledge that was being guarded, this spiritual knowledge was being guarded because it was pertaining to an immense power known as the Supreme Being. Right? And the Supreme Being, when described, was known to be all-powerful, even at times terrible. It could vanquish things, right? But what if that Supreme Being or weapon is then harnessed and used by individuals against other individuals? So what I'm trying to tell you is that you're living in a reality where the spiritual secret of how we regenerate continuously and remain perpetually immortal in a physical body has actually been taken by individuals. They reverse engineered it and then created what you call bombs, neutron bombs, etc. And then they are exploding them in the reality in order to call or evoke or provoke God. Okay? Now, what this is about is that now what you see in explosion is you see the creation, the life, the climax, and then the death of an entity, if you understand the molecules and things that you're dealing with. So what happens is that all in that one moment, a life and death takes place. But it doesn't stop there. It sends a ripple effect across the rest of the multiple layers that everyone knows we're in. They know that we're in hemispheres. We're in shells, basically. So what happens is that when those explosions take place, they knock on doors of the next dimension to entities who are basically living on their frequency in harmony. And then all of a sudden, something like an earthquake, but on a spiritual level, takes place. So do you see when you get Oppenheimer, when you get the plan of JPL, when you get the plan of the Theosophical Society, and when you see all these other components that were put in, they're mental, physical, spiritual components, the Nazi Party did not omit spirituality with anything. And that's why we have something like Facebook, because they discovered something else. They discovered that each human being on the planet does correspond to a star. They have a star origin. That's why what we call astrology. And if you can understand the stars, you'll know when that person's traveling through certain fields what they're going to experience. Like if you drive through a snowstorm, you know what you're going to experience. So certain constellations have different effects on us as we're driving through them. But to be able to harness all this data, meaning to have something that could actually record everyone's progress through their third-person interactions with people randomly, they needed something to do that on. And that's where the inceptions of the computers came in. So what you're dealing with is the gentleman's name is Hasshofer, started an institute that was a part of the paranormal division that enlisted thousands of people to understand what are the sympathetics of the kingdoms, meaning that what is your leader, what is his problems, what is his weaknesses, what are your weaknesses, what do you believe in, what did your tribe believe in, who do you think is really God? Like all these kind of questions were answered by them. So it's very easy for them to bring an erect system that obviously doesn't work. You see what it's doing to people. But actually be enough to fool us or cause a sudden case of amnesia to who we really are, which is actually supreme beings. We're like many supreme beings. Okay? So let's get into this pain, because this pain has a lot to do with fear. Because obviously, if I'm telling you that the planet basically got into a collision and it was very abrupt, something to the tune of rape for it, when you understand psychology, then you understand that when that occurs for someone, they alter out of that state of consciousness, meaning they close the door there, and then they open up 3 roads of ways or outlets that they can create to basically get them over that. So they overcompensate in certain other areas for that pain that has been pushed down, or the person has put away for a while. Okay, and then when they go through any kind of cleansing, okay, any kind, mental, spiritual, physical cleansing, it comes up. It's just like rubbing a floor that's dirty, and then you start seeing more stains as you keep rubbing it, right? Now, this is what was known as the chakra system. The chakra system, the least amount of karma is in the lower chakra centers, meaning that as you're progressing through your spiritual experience to get stronger, the karma of the different worlds that you've been in and what you've done there are what you're calling chakras. So as you move up through them, the easiest things to overcome actually have to do with your lower chakras. The more difficult things are when you get into the higher chakras. That's why most people never reach this godlike consciousness, or when they do, supreme being-like consciousness, or when they do, they go crazy. Because all of them, what I'm telling you is that all of the real history about the real mystical part of the situation here on Earth is locked in your 6th and 7th chakra and sealed, just like it says in Revelations. If you use the Kundalini energy or force as you progress through it, it's not something you just turn on and off or shoot like a gun. But if you get it up to that point, you can get to the ability of being strong enough to break off these seals, right? But until then, the more your body is sealed down, the less power you have. So all this power for healing, all this power for being able to do something for others, being able to stay in there and being able to keep thinking and figuring things out is all bottled into now lower chakras and not able to express itself. Okay. So what you get, because remember, this is serious now, because if you're experiencing pain, then you understand a part of it that most people don't. See, most people, they're healthy still. They're not feeling any pain. Some of them are young, etc. But they don't understand that when you have an ailment every single day that you need to actually fix, but you can't fix it until the point that it's broke you. Now, one of my friends went to Russia, and he said just recently, he said, man, when you look into the eyes, when you go into the ghettos, the people are actually broken. It's a different level. It's when they absolutely know that there's nothing they can do about their situation. While meanwhile, in other countries such as America, we've never been broken. So we still feel like if it takes us hurling a volcano at you somehow, then we can summon the power to be able to do that if it means us continuing on. You see what I mean? So what's occurring on this planet then is that, let me bring it centered then, because it's important for you to understand those that are working against you. Because what's happened is that now that you have these release of bombs, right? And then you see why now it was connected to the darker sorcery or witchcraft or mysticism of the old days of when you would bring untold or unhindered energies into a physical reality and they would become weapons. So now think about the actual description of the God of the Old Testament. 1, he's terrible. 2, you cannot see his face and live. 3, anyone coming in contact with him through the ark broke out in boils. 4, the Egyptians used the ark as a weapon to destroy other people. They would get in front of them, open it up, and it would destroy them. That's the description. What we're talking about here is a weapon. So when they tell you, in God we trust, on that dollar bill, the God they trust in, the physical God they trust in, is the king. The king has access to all of the weapons that if anyone comes against them, then they will use, on a physical level, then they will use those weapons. So in this tense, they surpassed Kundalini, because the first bombs you see really dropped on any living human beings were in Nagasaki. And if you understand the relationship between Naga and Kundalini and the world serpent, you'll see that the attack on Kundalini was made right then when the first bombs on our planet were dropped. This is when all of the beings that are invisible on this planet had to reveal themselves. See, people are not realizing what's going on here. This is a massive thing, but there are other entities that they don't want to hang out in the mall. They don't want to eat tacos and kill their body. And thus, they already went into higher frequency. And then when they move into those high frequencies, they're invisible like Wi-Fi. But what if a very dense being, a Time Lord, a Baal, a God, who erects himself on earth, knows all of this knowledge and starts to threaten them and make them do things to reveal themselves? That's why I said this is a major plight, because now it's brought in other interests into our situation going on here on earth. Meaning that when you're talking about destroying the lineage of star systems, you're going to actually get other entities that either want to provoke that or want to prevent that. And so now that's the world, that's the setting that we've been given. If we wanted to set the game, if some people think it's a game, if it's a game, it's set on ultra hard. Because to even figure all of this out, and even today I'm not doing the best at explaining it. That's why I made 3 parts to this. And honestly, I was going to sort my notes in the last 2 hours that I had to get ready for the show. And then I got a message saying that, I needed to move the show to another network. And I spent that whole 2 hours just booting up our equipment and getting things ready. So it even is going to take me a minute or even next show to get it all lined up. But I just want to go through a couple points, because these points aren't in order, but they're key. 1, the lost planets and continents and the 2 mothers. The lost planets are the areas that are now underwater, but the people who used to live there are now in boats. Then they take their boats or their arks and then they dock them on land. That's what a courthouse is. That's why a courthouse works on maritime law. The courthouse is not a part of that state. It has its own jurisdiction. It's like another planet. And so when you walk in there, they say you're basically under our laws, rules, and ethics. They talk weird to writ, habeas corpus, blah, blah, blah. You got men wearing skirts, so there's a inverted principle. So you see, so all of that is going on in the courthouse. So that's one thing about understanding that there are other civilizations that they don't have nowhere to go. And this is where the story stems from, that there was planets that were destroyed, and then now those people want our planet. No, it's continents that were sunk because of what they were doing there, and now they want to come on our land and build these microcosmic systems of Orion. Let me explain this. When you understand the grid of this planet, then you'll start seeing that when you lay out certain kind of geometry, such as what's in cathedrals, what's in certain artificial stone mounds, etc., you are actually creating or attempting to draw down the energy of another constellation on top of an area that doesn't even correspond to that constellation. So when you see the temples of Angkor Wat, you know that they're pointed to the system of Orion. But then if you go to Egypt and then you got the Egyptian pyramid pointed to the system of Orion too, what's going on? Is everyone trying to make a microcosmic system of Orion in every part of the Earth, even though the Earth actually corresponds to the entire universe? Yes. This is the monopoly. Okay, so here's the next thing. The 6th and 7th chakra in child abuse and holes in the aura and curses. Okay, in the 6th and 7th chakra, which is why most people never make it to that region. That is their total self-realization, the power. That's when the Kundalini actually circuits. The reason why they never get there is because by the 5th chakra, which is in the throat, there are things that they cannot say. There are ways they wish to express themselves that they cannot, according to laws, or which are rulers or walls. Okay, so what occurs then is that the person never sees this beautiful being that they really are in their crown chakra and full lotus because they can't pass 6th and 7th chakra because of child abuse. Now notice how the society is engineered so that the probability of some level of child abuse occurring, it will be very high for a child growing up, especially in any of these environments, right? So right then, when that child goes through that abuse, which is an uncomfortable topic, you see, why is it an uncomfortable topic? Because when someone has it occur, they don't want to talk about it anymore, right? So that closes and seals the chakra, right? But what actually has occurred, though, on the inverted level is there's a hole there. This is like a chink in your armor, okay? So going on, the next thing is relics, regalia, sorcery based on national interest. Okay, now what the paranormal division also discovered was many of the relics, like Constantine's sword, the Spheres Longinus, the Dorje rod of the High First Lama, carried the actual resonance of the individual that held it. So what they did first is they made replicas of the relics. And then they went in front of the people and say, oh, we got the sword. And they will bow down to the sword. And that's why everyone bowed down to the sword of Constantine, which is the Christian cross. Okay, so they would have the spear of Longinus. They would have the Dorje rod of the High Lama. So when they showed that, a replica, though, that's when you get later on into cloning and things, or masters of cloning. Then the people who worship those relics, which you'll see all throughout India and the Eastern world, they worship relics and stupas as being held by the masters so that they can tap into the energy. They said, this must be the rightful ruler. This must be the new king. He has the relic. And then once they began to conquer those areas and take control, then they would go and sequester the real relic for their paranormal purposes, which is sorcery based on national interest, which is when you take things like obelisk and you put that language on it, and then you put it on top of a very potent ley line, and then you have it send energy up through that. Now, look, this obelisk is shaped just like a missile, okay? This is old school spiritual warfare, okay? They would turn this thing on and then blast out this mind control, basically, on everyone. So this is what it was going on then and is going on now. So I'll keep going. You got shell corpse. This is what we discovered within etymology, especially in legal etymology, is that every single thing that corresponds to the human body is actually put into some kind of legal stance. You have a corpus or a corporation. You can form an entity. You can incorporate or get together into the corpus. All of the terminology that they're using is based on the human body. They didn't discover anything, but they are not reinventing the wheel, meaning that what they design will work because it's a definite model of us. So what happens when you have shell corporation? A shell corporation is something that hides the true identity of the being that is within, or the entity that is within, the corporation within, the owner of the corporation, okay? So when you understand your body is a shell. It is made out of phi. That's why phi is a shell. So that is your shell corp. We don't know who you really are based on this skin you're showing me and this black hair you're showing me and these color of your eyes. I don't know who you are. I need to see your spirit. But if you're living in a reality where the last incubators, the ones who use the incubation stations based on phi, have been reincarnating all the superfluous spiritual beings into phi-based bodies that just have two arms, two legs, and a head, so that they can tell them that, oh, this is you. And also, you're made in the image of God. Okay, well, God is a Germanic god Gud who has a goat foot. And that goat foot is the pentagram when you turn it upside down, meaning once all this stuff has a positive and negative side to it. So when you turn it upside down, now you're getting the inverted. You're getting the darker, ignorant, base pillar side, right? And so this is what they want to encourage everyone to do. Go ahead and invert. Go ahead and enlist all these entities to go ahead and do destruction and put yourself reigning as queen or king over the planet of mortals who don't know anything about it, right? So that's the game they're playing. So that's why I said the alliance, which is a collection of individuals that actually decide this is not going to go down. I will activate in other individuals based on that planetary system and transcend energy into them so that they can release their mothers and fathers from that burden. This is not a game. That's why I keep telling people you want something for yourself, but the only way you can go into this is to actually do it for other people. Now, ley lines, the paths taken by the ancestral spirits. This is an important thing. When you leave out of the body, because of the current system that we're under, you can't travel in curves. You only travel in straight lines. So these passageways are basically dug out in grooves over our planets, and they are over our planet, and they call them ley lines. This is ancient knowledge. So when the spirit leaves the body, it finds the ley line because that's the path that the other spirits went. So why not go that path, since this is all ancestors? We're all in the same group, right? But what happens if someone starts tampering with the ley line, and then where it actually ends is, quote unquote, an incubation station, a temple, a place that has been constructed as a microcosmic form of a human being, but it is synthetic. And thus, when the person comes through it, then they actually reincarnating into a synthetic state of life where they have an inclination towards going back to that temple or the dogma, symbol, or geometry in which that temple is under. What am I talking about? Why is this so important to always have little children in church or in the mosque? What is this whole magnetism between the child having to be there? It's because that is the incubation station, and those are the entities in which manage over that. Going forward, the human astrolabe, you got to look it up. An astrolabe is basically a diagram that shows you how to map out the stars based on your current position, right? It's an ancient tool. Now, you have a human astrolabe then, which is basically an organic being that is utilized to do the same thing, meaning that every single human being here is a part of, in itself, a diagram that actually corresponds to the stars. So when you want to predict the movements, when you want to understand the future, you have to be able to monitor all of them. Now, remember they told you the scenes were monitoring the stars, right? And they had all the information. It took hundreds and hundreds of years to accumulate this level of data. But the Romans, they wanted it. Now, obviously, the Romans is the continuation of the Nazi Empire, that same old hated bird, right? So they wanted this information from the scenes, and the scenes just as soon as killed themselves before giving it away. But the idea of what it was passed on, meaning that the idea of actually keeping everyone's information and all the new stars that appear and then appearing when special ones are born, which the scenes of the Magi would do, right? All of that idea was then put into, like I said, things such as Facebook, where you can use massive social networks to actually record the actual movement and behavior of individuals to plot their course in the stars so that you understand what others are going to be doing, right? And then that's called data harvesting the dream scope. Okay, so when you get this is what people didn't see with Prism. Prism is speech to text, meaning that this conversation that we're having is then taken in by a computer. The computer uses it just like there's a couple programs for your iPhone or whatever and turns it into text. There's not some person back there like everyone thinks at the NSA. It's a lady with blonde hair just assigned to you. This is what he's saying today. Guess what he's about to do. Go ahead and send this upstairs. That's not what's going on. It's a computer reading interpreting everything you're saying into text, and then actually listing that text onto a screen, pulling out the keywords and the sequence of those keywords, and then determining what you're going to do next.
Mind-blowing. We'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen. Quick top of the hour break. We've only gotten started right here on Truth Frequency with Sevan. We'll be right back. All right, we are back, ladies and gentlemen. Second hour right here on Truth Frequency, speaking with Sevan Bomar. And Sevan, pick it back up wherever you'd like. Do we still have you with us, Sevan?
Yeah.
Okay. Take us away, please.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
All right. So I'm juiced up, obviously, as far as just being seated within the message today. So I'll just keep going with this because obviously I'm running closer to the end of this conversation for today. I have really the rest of it scheduled within 2 or 3 segments, but I just wanted to let everyone know that, I'm here. I'm fully aware and abreast of what's going on. I have solutions, and we can get into that obviously towards the end of the program, exactly what we're going to do about this, because people need to understand that the same thing that was created to cause massive destruction, turn 180 degrees, will actually cause massive regeneration, because that's what it was first. They took the knowledge of fusion and turned it outside, which created an explosion. And then that basically damaged our field and left a hole in it. And then that hole became a place where entities that weren't supposed to be here, entities that were upset about what just occurred while you woke them out of what is like a perpetual dream time sleep, etc. And we know that this is occurring, but you just have to understand physics. Remember, physics, which they say has everything to do with this hidden world and everything that's, you can't see, it has physics in the front, as in physical. So in every tense, you have to take physics as something that's going on with the physical body. So I wanted to talk about, again, this one topic, which is the drones and the clones. Because in every tense, it's important for people to see that there's something very synthetic about what is taking place on the planet. And that synthetic has a lot to do with plastic. It has a lot to do with our relationship with oil. And what this is actually causing is it's causing an excessive sickness for us. That's why our body is breaking down. So I'll take this part of the program to start talking about what's going on in the body. Okay? The first thing is that the water, at 70% water, if you are drinking damaged, unstructured water, you are thus erecting as yourself being the real temple. As an architect, which you're the person, the architect, the one who's building the temple, you are ordering your temple to be built with sludge. So we have to see that right off the bat, that your time was spent, a great part of your time was spent maintaining the vehicle that you're in. And so still think of that as priority to getting the actual control point, to getting yourself on top of the spiritual situation that's taking place. The other thing is that I think where we left off, what I was talking about with the speech to text, and just the whole idea of we don't really have any privacy. Okay? And I'll tell people this just from because we act closed sometimes as if we're doing things that others cannot see. But in reality, that is not what's going on. Your moves and your actions are being monitored by someone or something. It doesn't mean it's always a government. But there are several frequencies that you cannot see. And then when you can, you'll notice, especially if they're above ours, that the rule is you actually have some sway over anything that is actually below you. Right? And people think, well, how could that even occur? I don't believe that. Think about when you see an ant running on the counter, and then you put your hand on it, and you just destroy the ant, because the ant is on another level below you, right? So I think people need to see that we have this chain going on. We're all building something. It's just about, what are we building? Are we going to build a future of destruction? Are we going to let them take the highest level of what then was spiritual knowledge and turn it inside out, invert it, and then bring it against us and let it divide us? Because if you think about explosion, it has everything to do with division, right? Everything breaks up. Cars break up, dust, everything everywhere, right? So that's what's happening on a spiritual level when one of those things are let off. So obviously, the solution is, some people say, well, how do I get past? Because I had this question for a while. How do you get past the 6th and 7th chakra? If you've been through some level of abuse that you can't even talk to anyone about, and you can't let it go, how do you get through it? And this is a massive question. So I sat down for a while. And then I came to the ultimate answer again. Love and compassion. Because have you ever seen a child, if you've ever seen an animal abused, you'll notice that the only thing that can actually begin to coerce that animal to deal with just whatever abused it again was love by some of the same species that don't do that. And then you have to go back in there and tell that altered character, come here. I understand what has occurred. You are very confused about how the world is because you saw one part that disturbed you. Okay? Now, here's another thing with the ultimate reality of ever meeting the supreme being or the oversoul, etc. When you move into the 6th and 7th chakra, because it's attached to your mental body and who you think you are and what you think you are very heavy, when you move into that frequency, it has the ability to actually cause the mind to retard, to actually be where the person gets crazy. Because when you go into the 6th and 7th chakra, if you have all of these fears and you have all these things that have been bottled up and they haven't been dealt with, then the only being you're going to meet is basically that other version of you that you put away. So that's why this became a serious thing. There are groups of people, Chris, that, especially for their lineage and their tribe, they train them on how to remove this kind of biorhythmic issue. You see what I mean? And so that way that their spirit and their being doesn't go about this life just continuously trying to build on a broken foundation. It's like you're trying to hold yourself up and then you're also holding up others. You got to repair the ship while it's flying. You may snatch a fuse out. This means a person that actually really needs to be involved with how things are going in your sphere. You may snatch a fuse out and watch the plane pummel to fix that fuse and then put it right back in before you're about to hit the ground and then pull up the lever. It's that kind of thing going on here. The interesting part is that what I'm noticing is when we're deactivated, we don't have as much senses. So meaning we don't love strongly. We become very shallow. So it's easy for us to forget everything that a person has done for us all in one moment. And that's the anger of the situation, which is blinding. It causes for one moment for you to forget that this person really loves you. Forget where they were when you had this certain situation. Forget all of that. And this is happening. We're doing this to each other, right? So what really happened with spirituality is that the ultimate weapon, which is what you would call magic, the magic of the situation, what's new, right, was taken away from us. We were robbed of our firsts. We had this ability to continuously create new things. Then all of a sudden we were put in a circle, a cookie cutter. Say, oh, this is all you can get. This is as much as you could do. The best you could be is like this person. You see what I mean? So this is now time that we have the opportunity to break out of that. But it also is about, do you really want this? Notice how in any kind of story where there was someone about to do a miracle, there was a question asked to the individual that said, do you really want this? Do you really want to be healed? Because there's a knowledge that says that, of course, all of what you're going to have to do to repair the vessel that you've done damage to is going to challenge how much you really want to do it. Because at times, certain things are going to have to be cut out. Meaning certain things you're going to have to stop. So this is what I call flying into the face of the sun, my friend. As you're flying into the face of the sun, it's a pipeline. As you're going, all of what you have is stripped off of you. So hopefully there's a lot of truth to you, because after that happens, that's what will remain. It's just like a person that has like the crown jewels and everything. When that's taken from them, how do they act? Were they just being defined by the crown jewels? Same thing with a magician. He does certain magic tricks, then the magic tricks don't work anymore or cease to fascinate people. Does that mean he's no longer anything? Because he just got bundled up as being his magic tricks? You see, so there is a much deeper lesson that is taking place here on this planet with us in real time. And it's gotten to the point where, as the 2012 crossover, it's happening in real time. We're actually in an environment where people around us are galactic resonators. They are actually planetary constellations running by the house, driving in the car, calling you on the phone and everything. And we're still not in the know of recognizing that this is exactly what is happening. And then start getting to the point where you can control it. If there's the only thing that you can control, this was the key, the apex to this being that you're in, was that the only apex of this was you could control it because you can control yourself. You see, this was what made us so different than things running on instinct, which is a lot of the lower frequencies, the animals and the creatures and the monsters. They run based on what they're told to run on. You see, look at uranium and look at iridium and look at many of these molecules that are used in constant explosions. They don't have a will. You see what I mean? It's man and woman with the will. So do you see where the power is? You see the pentagram, they give it to everyone, throw it all around the place, put magical stuff and sigils in it, right? But look at your hand. That's the real pentagram. That's the hammer that was used to build. Every single thing in this physical reality, it took our hands to start to construct it first before it ever came into existence. That's why it means so much. And you're carrying a double hammer. You got two hands. But this is the hammers of Thor, though. Only Thor can pick them up, meaning that only the individual that is ready to see their godlike consciousness can use their hands to actually regenerate this reality. Other than that, it's just like playing. We're benched. No energy, no knowing of what's going on, lost in an abyss, waiting to see a light. So as we shine through, because that's what we're doing, we'll light this I tell you, there'll be a day where this entire night sky will light up, and there will no longer be any darkness. There will no longer be where we see ourselves far in the galaxy. Do you know, closer that you get into the core, the lights are so bright that it all looks like they're together? Listen to what I'm saying. You're on a planet where you look out at the sky at night and you see these little glimmer of stars. But if you took off, but it would be going to the innerverse, into the implosive center of yourself, eventually the light would get so bright you would not see any separation. There would be no darkness. And then you would know that you've made it again. And that's the whole thing about Earth that I discovered in his files. This thing was going on all the time. It was like the last people or last beings here just cleaned up a couple things, put a couple monuments away, and let this thing run again. I told you a story today about the story that is the most popular that is running, that has all metaphors, and it's about Atlantis. Because it gets into many other dynamics. It gets into other entities. It gets into creating souls and animals. It gets into using basically the planet like an organic PlayStation and creating things. It gets into a lot of stuff. But I think what was most important today was what was projected today. Pole position. You have to now have the balance. Because remember, in the king's hand, he holds a scepter. That scepter is the symbol of his power. Right? Now, inside of you, that scepter is your spine. If you are holding your spine or your pole, or you're centered in yourself, you are in control. Right? But if you're on the tree or the zigzag or the other serpents or the other organs in your body, serving them, if you're doing that, then you're off balance. And that off balance causes a wobble. Then you're no longer like the Prius of the universe. You're more like Jabba the Hutt. So people need to see that, look, when you're ready to leave into the next frequency, it was just waiting on you. But that's why I said, do you really want it? But it helps us all to know that it's in reach, and that's what we did for each other. There was a danger when we wrote about this. This is another thing that you have to understand, Chris. When we wrote about spiritual knowledge, that also gave it the opportunity to fall into the hands of individuals that were base and primitive and took it on an external level. You see what I mean? That's why they kept hiding the holy books. Because they said, yeah, this thing is like, it's beneficial for the adept, but for the fool, it's destructive. And that's what we're also talking about when we're talking about the body. I'm not talking about magical books. I'm talking about all the actions that we're actually making through this planet, whether we're being coerced to do it or not, is accumulating in a giant stream of our own timeline. And that when you do leave here, and you will, everyone does, you only wake up in another reality that you've laid across through your string. You see what I mean? So we're now moving into the point where we know how to lay out those tracks that they call DNA. They're like railroad tracks. You can pull some out and insert some in. Some people say, well, what do you mean? Or you could change the past? Of course you can change the past right now. All you have to do is start behaving as if it didn't occur, right? By going to it and saying you were confused. You saw the world through that one's prism, meaning the one who caused the damage. So his entry or her entry left an imprint on you. But that imprint is not you. So you see, this is the deepest level of psychological and spiritual and physical surgery that could ever really be performed. And that's why I'm saying I'm not necessarily, actually these days I'm hearing that I'm doing it for multiple individuals, but I am also learning this as a student of it. But this drive is coming from, I want to assist others and I want to assist myself because I see no difference. I know that all is self. And I'll end this whole conversation with this tonight. People need to know what happened to me, how I got like this. And me and my good friend Thomas are putting something into in the studio together now. But I've never talked about that because it's never been something that I was on the cold floor of the ship of the alien probed me. I was in there and then the Great White Lodge. That seems to be everyone's story. They come up with, they use that as their entry point to how they're going to explain themselves and what's going on in the dimension. That's not what I did. I described the mission of what we need to do. But I'll tell you, there is a higher state of consciousness within you, and there is a way to awake it. To awake it is something to the tune of causing an implosion inside of your body, a very powerful one that causes a chain reaction. They call this Kundalini. And as you're going through the chakras, the energy center of the body is continuously increasing. It is very vivid. It's not something that you have to imagine is happening. As it keeps coursing through, if it reaches any blocks, you will actually physically overheat. Okay? Or you will blow a certain part of yourself. It can cause a disease or an ailment. And this is why they had to lock up the books on this. It's like the fool is going to just attempt to try to unlock the chakras. He doesn't even know why he became, or she doesn't even know how she became a fool, which they're going to actually encounter when they become all-seeing and all-knowing. So when you're moving through this massive energy field and you start to encounter the truth about yourself, and if it doesn't become what you want to see or what you thought you were going to see, that means you see it as separate than you. This is called going crazy. This is why people talk to themselves. This is called the Babylonian syndrome. This is called the Jerusalem syndrome. This is called Kundalini, what is it? Overexcitement of Kundalini. It's when a person goes crazy. There's hospitals full of these people. I also have a formula, a method, which we've developed over time that can even bring those kind of people back. I'm telling you, your love for the individuals that are around you and how it's waning is caused because our reality is being bombarded. Like we have to get to the point where we understand how to create a physical, mental, spiritual, implosive device out of ourselves and detonate it. Meaning that you become an energy powerhouse in the center that you're in, and it will activate this grid. That's how it works. I've read thousands of books. I've been given the opportunity to be able to have time to do this from all the individuals that have believed and supported the resistance and Astral Quest, etc. But in every moment, I've felt the weight of that responsibility. I have not been sitting back here twiddling my thumbs, and nor has anyone with me. But if you can hear something today, know that this is serious. There are many in pain because of this situation. And that's why I think that this came up today. So if you're one of those individuals that know how to convert pain into your strength, then start listening to this knowledge and start allowing it to let you understand how to unlock your body, your mind, and your soul, and how to see the reality that is right in front of you, but is often misinterpreted because we don't have the right knowledge. But now it's here. So that's really all I have to say, Chris. I wanted to say thank you for, being obviously available for this today, because, the questions and the responses and the things were totally motivated based on our interaction. But I also, again, want to be available if there's any questions that you have or anyone else has, especially directly, because I have reached a point where I got the knowledge of this planet and a few other ones adjacent to me. I see a galactic program, a map that I can use in any world I appear in. And so any type of geodynamics or geoenergetic systems that you need to understand fully, like where to start, I can totally enlighten you on the situation.
Excellent, excellent. I didn't want to interrupt because you were on a roll there, and I always sit here and meditate on everything that you're saying, and it's really amazing how deep you can get into these conversations. You've answered a lot of my questions so far. I think what I'm going to do is, if any of the listeners want to call in, I can open up the phone lines here. It's going to take me a second, but Cherie has been hurting all day, and I didn't think she was going to join us today, but she's actually been here since the beginning of the second hour. So is there anything you want to add to it?
Oh, I just wanted to say what you described as going on in Atlantis is a lot like what Terence McKenna described as the not feminine, but divine feminine kind of culture, whereas more of it wasn't even really a matriarchy, it was a partnership between the male and the female. And then when they started using mead to store the magic mushrooms, they were tainted by the mead, of course, because they fermented in the honey. Mm-hmm. Do you think that holds any relevance?
Which is all a deep metaphor. I'm glad that you brought that up, because really, when you want to see the geometry, it's the constellation of Orion. You have two interlacing triangles. That's the agreement between the male and the female to enter into each other. You got the fermentation, because what's created is a sphere or incubation place in the cube, basically the matrix or Ma, etc. And then the pain that comes when it actually starts to get to the point, just like in a mother's birth, the ultimate pain where the child has to be birthed. So that is exactly the entire process. But notice there is one process of the birth that is painful. And then when you go before that, then, because some people say, okay, well, I guess that's just how it is. That would be like someone telling you the most painful thing that ever happened, and then you just saying, well, that's, I guess that's... Anyway, you want to go to the store? You see what I mean? It's like,
right.
What? So in reality, when you go back further, it says that this was caused because of certain things. And obviously they start getting into the serpent and things of that nature. And when you understand the ultimate level of that wisdom, it is the pentagram. That's why it's called serpent. It is the knowledge of how to contain things that just need to be kind of free-flowing. Right? Like, why would you want to, like I said, take a picture to last longer? Why would you want to hold something, put it in a cage or a bottle or a jar, a mason jar? Why would you want to put something in a crucible and put pressure on it and let it explode and blow up other things? Why would you want to do that? So that's when you get into weapon worship. Go ahead.
Well, Sir Francis Drake said, he said we have to torture her secrets out of her, talking about Mother Earth.
Yes,
Mother Nature.
That would definitely be a direct connection to the tools of the Inquisition, or the etymology behind the word torture. And that's so when you ask yourself, okay, yeah, this life we definitely will be driving off at some point, or maybe not, who knows? But there was some other lives that we did. So how did we leave there? And that, as you read in the book, Dr. Baldwin Seavey, he starts to talk about how that was, again, the third most occurring thing that he saw when trying to relieve people of their situation, was that in their previous life they were terminated in a means where it was shocking to them. And that's why you see this game being played by all the governments and things, even though the ones in the cabal are all on the same side, but they are offering up their soldiers and troops and things as a sacrifice by allowing them to fight each other. And then when they die in that combat, in that moment, that actually becomes their impact, or their next life of some type of schism taking place, right? So this is
it's
why,
like the catalyst, right? Isn't it, to the alchemical process of sacrifice for them to do that?
Well, I would say in certain tenses that, because, these days when I hear the sacrifice, I think of so many different things, but still realizing that, yes, it's definitely connected to the sacrifice, because what you were really dealing with is each king, or the one that was in allegiance to this, darker oversoul, whatever you want to call it, they actually had, and how can I explain this? Okay, they actually had demands of how much soul force they needed from each part of the prism, okay, or the prison. And as long as that was met, then it could be used to construct whatever it was that they were building. So in many cases, there were people who went under, from the demands of their king, extensive levels of sacrifice, all the way up until the point that their entire tribes are wiped out. This served then to bring the priests of that tribe that were also still as a bloodline connected into ultimate control of their people, because they would still live through that priest. Just like you can live through, they say you live in the body of Jesus. You see what I mean? So the same thing is going on, because these are the kingdoms that the immortal Charlemagne set up. Like, this is when, as I have in the notes here, you're dealing with clock builders, right? Or they could build an astrolabe, meaning that they have some kind of diagram of how to create a world, whether it's synthetic or real. So it could be put into a person's mind. That's why if you notice in Inception, say we need an architect. We need someone who can build the world in their mind, but very complex. But at the same time, not know that they're necessarily doing this. That's about the lucid dream. You can't be into it too much. So what if you have men, let's say out in Switzerland, who are building Bulgari watches with dynamics that still equal the same precision, but that are more complex? That geometry and those numbers being pushed into others' minds to create worlds that they could then put less complex geometry into, so that they'll act like children there. Meaning that if all this stuff doesn't make sense and it's all too much and blah, 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 that's a reality of not realizing supreme being. And when you go into 6th, 7th chakra, when you Kundalini awake, that's actually what happens. And that's why, again, it was off limits, because a person, when they go into that, it's just one point of where either it works or it doesn't. And probably they're saying the ratio now is that 92, 93%, possibly higher, it doesn't work. And meaning that when a person starts to have this God-like experience or supreme being experience within themselves, they start to slip a couple wheels. And this is because our chemistry in our body, some of the other knowledge, because remember, the body is all powerful also if you understand how to maneuver it and get out of it, but if not, it becomes a pin. And then when you start to weigh it down, the organs start to fail, and then now all of a sudden you're being dragged down based on things that you just have agreements with. The real human being sits in the seat of their soul in their head. We're just orbs. The arms are Mars, the torus is torso, and the legs are every bit of the pillars that are all in the constellations and the entities that they're made of. We had to create bodies, and I say we in this tense because we still all descend from the maximized same source, but we had to create bodies in order to insert ourselves into three-dimensional realities. You're just an orb in someone's photograph normally. Generally, if you're not in a physical body, you cannot appear here. But when you get a physical body, there's like a binding or a pact or a lease with it. The things that's happening here is that notice how marriage, to have and to hold, to sickness and to death, to, you know, all these kind of vows, that marriage is not between just you and the actual woman. It's with you and the sea. It's with you and Mary, the maritime. She's the controller of all the women through the womb. Right? So then when you understand what kind of connection are we talking about, you have to read about this in the ancient books about what's going on in the sea, how there's more emotion connected with women and why. Their connection and symbiotics with the moon, and them all being even sequential on the same cycle if they're around each other. All these kind of things are what needed as far as their cycles. People would need to start looking at this from another level and say, okay, well, if 5 women are together and they start having the same cycle, that actually means they actually start synchronizing themselves in an orbit. Because as stars who read astrology all the time, we are always coursing and moving through space, but now we found a frequency or a blood match, right? Like a biorhythmic match. And that's what also you see with the organic grid of this planet, that it was corrupted by using the plasma or the blood to act as an actual activation fluid for it. You see what I mean? Like, go ahead.
Let me give out the call number real quick. We've got a couple people holding as well, and I've got several questions too. Yeah, I don't want to lose the opportunity to get some listener interaction here. 213-238-3998, and once again, it is 213-233-3998, and we have a caller from Indianapolis joining us. Area code 317. You are on the air. What is your name?
Hello?
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine. My name is Joshua Turner. How you doing?
Very
Nice
good.
to meet you.
Nice to have you on the show. What's on your mind tonight?
Well, basically, well, I just called in randomly, and it was great to just talk and connect with people that I can understand. I would like to know, I took a path down Christianity, then I kind of ventured into a little bit of Kabbalism, and I started to learn and understand that all these things were just, I would say, opening doors or something like that. So I guess my question for Sevan would be, me learning these things and understanding these things, is this a bad thing? Should I shake this all off, or should I use it as some type of stepping stone to the next level?
I mean, you got it right there. It's just all a ladder. The whole goal is to just not to stay in it. Just as Kundalini, it doesn't, it's not about just getting to one chakra. Some people say, I would get to the crown chakra and then that's it. And reality is that you have to continuously cycle. So, yeah, man, that you got it. You hit it right on the head.
And I appreciate that too, big brother. You gave me a lot of good advice. I was homeless once, and you gave me some very, very good advice to all the people out there listening. I've been through church. My pops was a Muslim for a little while. He's been to Africa, Ghana, here and there. I'd have to say, man, you got solid truth, man. You got real solid truth, and it's very helpful, and it's something we need in this time and age, man. So I just want to say big ups to you. Yes, sir.
Oh, man, I'm saying
what are you going to say?
I was just saying, man, I definitely appreciate it, brother. I mean, all the people that have been emailing me and letting me know how they've received the information and how it's transformed a lot of things about what's been going on with them in a positive way, or really in a balanced way. We've grown so far in this last 3 or 4 years to understanding how to deal with so many things. So, yeah, I just want to say thanks for calling in and connecting.
No problem. No problem. Hey, you got to keep up the good work, because we need that. We need that, and this world is changing very, very soon and fast as we speak.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you for the call. Definitely.
All right.
I've got a couple of questions from the chat here. Ask Sevan if he agrees with Hermetic principles. He has referenced some of them tonight.
Do I believe in Hermetic symbols? What I believe is that
Hermetic principles.
Hermetic principles.
I'm just asking them the way they're coming in.
Well, I would say it's all a part of a corpus. That there are some Hermetic principles that are just part of the overall as above, so below nature of even what I was discussing today. And then there's always the spin, because Herm and the rest of the etymology behind that, and those who take on that mark, which also gets into the more of the Horus dynasty, then you start to get an entirely different component being rewritten today by what is called Hermetic. So if I tell you, yeah, and then you go and be a Hermetic person, according to what you Google and you start finding as far as information, which starts to stem into Rosicrucianism, then it may be just a long trip on one level of the ladder.
And I have another question for you here. This is a little longer one. What is the connection of Kundalini to the 33rd parallel? Is it between Nagasaki and Hiroshima, and also the first nuclear test site by a 33rd degree Mason and 33rd president? Why so many 33s?
Well, first of all, the 33 is not the... Like, if you notice, when you divide 33 into 100, it never comes out perfectly, right? So realistically, what you have is you have 33 vertebrae in the spine, but you also have other vertebrae that are missing from the spine, which is where our tail was, our coccyx, or our story. So what I'm saying here is that when you put something on a parallel that is and it's unbalanced, then anything that occurs in that parallel is going to speed up that particular area. Now, notice how when you look into Orion and you see the interlacing triangles, they're not in balance. So then you take the number 3 and you add it plus 3 and you get 6, right? And then you have this period when the two triangles are interlacing, and while they're interlacing, they're not balanced until they come into interlocking with each other. So there's like a dance going on between the interlocking part, right? And that dance is actually what is creating this world. So when you get 33, you get the word 6, which is sex. Look, there's a word called sextant. It actually, sextile, it means 6. So it's the sex or the coming together, but that's also a part of the conflict. So what we're saying is that there was a realization of all of this at a certain point, And we went through the process, like when the mother has the child and then, she's gone through that pain, but it also brings her so much joy, right? So what happens if the mother stops receiving the joy that is why she would even be giving out the life? You see what I mean? And so that's also what we're dealing with in the plan. So again, if you understand the number 33, then you understand it just as that. It actually means quite a bit of things, but that being primarily 2 interlacing triangles, 6 and sex, then the imbalance that occurs or the dance in between when it unites, and then it turns into what they say is the number of the heavenly spheres, which is actually 7. That's why 7 rhymes with heaven. Not saying it's actually me, but I'm just explaining that the geometry of the heavens is mapped out based on a prism, while the geometry on Earth is mapped out based on a pentagram according to the system that's currently installed. And so I would definitely say that don't quote me on it as saying, that's the only thing that the reality can run on. No, I understand what they've done here with the geometry, but I am expanding into realities that are completely out of that scope.
Very well said.
Good answer. I can't even argue with that.
You got to give them the whole answer these days, or they come back and say, but you said this, you said I could be a hermetic, and now look at me.
Yep.
Sometimes, masters and your teachers, you got to realize that you have promised certain people that are listening to your show lifetimes ago that you would make sure that they got the information when it was time. And think about this whole discipleship is basically like a parenting. It's when you decide to become someone's parent or their instructor, right? All these words are synonymous with each other for a reason. So when you take on that position and then you give to other individuals, if you were talking about giving them basically full enlightenment of everything, it's called self-realization, which is all the self, then you were going to spend a couple times. So you would show up with many different masks. And that's what we see with each other, to tell you the truth. Mm-hmm. Like sometimes, feel like, and if you're centered in yourself, you'll see that it starts to feel like sometimes everyone around you is more of like a character in a very large dramatic dance with you. And that they keep playing this role. Like I've seen in my life where I've had a lot of fire, and then there was a merry resonator that was able to quench that fire and kind of douse me out for a moment. I've seen the different constellational passings of certain energetics that we can identify in constellations or on our planet also. And so this is the thing that's going to fuel us also, because remember, what we're suffering from more than anything is that we can't get excited anymore. And this is Dan Winter started talking about this when we were in one of our last conversations, but it basically stemmed into the bliss and how there was a problem with when you can't basically get it up. And this is not necessarily a physical thing. It's just a physical thing, because you have to get it up spiritually first. That's the Kundalini. That's why it always seems to somehow be connected to Tantra. That's why everyone's saying, well, it's Tantra. No, Tantra is the other route. Kundalini is when you jumped off the system from within, and it will cause any chakra that is passing through to arouse. And it will feel orgasmic as you come into communion with that particular frequency of wavelength. If you stay there long enough, your physical reality will then begin to morph into that frequency, meaning you will move. You will actually leave the house or constellation that you're in, and you will go into another constellation or house. Right? So that's why I say this is like a dream scope. This is you as a Time Lord spiraling through realities. You need to grab the astrolabe, geopolitically and geonationally and geologically position yourself and get control over the wheel, because you're not on the dimension with beings that are being sympathetic. They lost their world already from mistakes that they keep making. Who are they? Us. That's how it all connects. See, the same mistakes that we're making now are the same mistakes that these beings were doing in the future that caused the end of their world. So they're actually back here trying to create a simulation of the situations to see if anyone can solve it. So far, anyone that is, again, coming to the God state consciousness, 96% of them lose their minds. Trying to hold all the energy of the Supreme Being in one body is impossible. You have to do it as a group. That's what the organic grid was. The organic grid system on a planet, I can feel you from over here, brother. I can send you energy from over here. Oh, don't worry about it. I got plenty. You see what I mean? But for it to get to you, it's got to go through other beacons, meaning I got to send it to the next door neighbor. He's got to send it. And it amplifies as it goes. That's how we were rolling. You see what I mean? In any new child or star that we created, we made sure that it shine bright and not ever go dim. Because we understand why darkness is associated with fear. This is the first fear that the child ever encounters. Oh, I fear the darkness. Right? So what happens is that we need to see what's happening here and go in. Like I said, it's not, we're going in. I'm trying to encourage other people, look, get involved. This is a big thing. Like right now, they are restrained, many of the entities that will be trying to prevent this. But they are here. And they are behind walls now, meaning that think about what happened in the tense of if you understand the entire Nazi story, and then you understand how they came in the United States with that mess. America, which is a deity in itself, it's a corpus, it's a body. They formed America as a woman and then began to abuse her. You see what I mean? And then gave everyone that identity, right? They marked us, imprinted us with all this MK Ultra programming, cartoons, and all these kind of characters, Voltron, Transformers, Atari, Pac-Man. You see what I mean? All these are astral forms of marked images just used for distraction. And that's why we talked about the last show, the solar insight. When you're flying into the face of the sun, you're not really thinking about whether Aunt Bertha is going to bring you your money. And that's why it's so difficult to hold on to your mind, because when you go into these higher frequencies, which we're going to need to go. And this is what I think. If you want to say, so Sevan, what do you think is going to happen here? This is what I think. I think we're racing something. I think we're racing into something. I don't think we can avoid it. I've noticed that when trying to stop it, we seem to be being pulled into it. Yeah. What this is really about is that we have to get to the point where we can hold limitless energy inside of us. This is a massive feat. It seems that as the constellations continue to turn, like a soap opera, that we are getting closer and closer to some magnificent magnetic magnetar. And that is causing us to be very loopy. It is causing us to forget pretty much everything that happened even last week. What happened Tuesday? I don't know. I don't even care. You know, where's your love for this? I don't even got time for that. See, that's what it's causing, and it's almost invisible. You see what I mean? It's the solar flares from the sun are affecting us. No, they're not. Nothing's really happening. My computer's working. Is your computer working? Or do you have an organic computer or a synthetic computer, sir? Because all of the inorganic synthetic computers were modeled exactly off of the body. The screen is the face. The keyboard is, the mic is and the headphone is the ears. You see what I mean? So the bus is running across. So all of this kind of things that we've created externally are the synthetics. And so that's what I'm saying. We're in this thing, and just like they were showing us in the movie The Resistance, and there was ever a resistance, John Connor and all that kind of stuff, it's all true. But it's like right next to us, though. And that's why we can't see it. Like when you really see these things, like you brought up Terrence McKenna, when your third eye turns on, you see the densities. You actually can see every single shade of green if you're looking into the forest, and you recognize them all as different. Then when you're looking, you start seeing the spaces in between, and then you see residents there. You see, so if a person is not really telling you about that, it's because they didn't go there, which is okay. It would be all the reason why stuff is really we're really clueless at this point. I always use this to power myself. I want to know that the reason why I haven't fully expanded into this maximized entity is because something is going on. You know, that's what attracts people to our shows. They know something's going on. They just don't know what it is. Right. Because if they know it's actually something, it will make them a little bit more calmer. Okay, I thought it was just me. Like the guy said, call in. I thought it was just me. So what happens now is that we become reflectors, my friend. That people start to, just as they saw it in me, they start to see it in you. Then they start to see it at each other. That's organic grid. We ping pong off of one another. I'm coming into the full realization of what it is as I'm speaking to you now. That's how timed it is. It's something that is out of my control. I can only just happily report, as I said, and do my best to articulate it properly so that individuals get it in this language that we've been given. Well, so that's what's up.
You're doing a great job on that, definitely. Mm-hmm. We've got a caller from San Diego, California. Let's go to San Diego.
Maybe it's Maybe it's linen.
Area code 323. You're on the air.
Hello.
Hello. How are you?
Hi. I just wanted to thank Sevan for just being on the show today. I've been listening to Astral Quest for probably about a week, and I mean I've been into metaphysics for a while, but I appreciate the way you navigate language with responsibility, because a lot of people are looking for somebody to point them in the right direction. You know what I mean? And or give one blatant answer. And that kind of, I remember I heard you made a point about like the milk and being dependent, and a lot of us have, I feel like a lot of us have a lot of weaning to do, because we're always looking for that, looking for someone to just point us in a direction. I've been there plenty of times, really, when you get into, metaphysics, and you kind of, the fear rises up, and you're like, okay, what do I do? Somebody give me the correct answer. But I really appreciate the way you answer questions and things like that.
Oh, and you're more than welcome, especially if I can get into it. It's like sometimes, especially these days, because the message is, it's not necessarily more complex, even though maybe people may see it as such. It's just more difficult to explain because we're still talking about virtually the same thing, which is all itself. Now we've just gone into a deeper explanation of what actually occurred in between us, not in total realization of that, just to kind of get people to remember. You can't make anyone do anything, but to get them to remember, look, this is exactly what happened.
Mhm. Right. Right. It's like you kind of it kind of stirs up your I guess for lack of a better word, juices, I guess.
It gives you life. I mean, that's what it's doing. It's giving you life, because if I left off, and that's what I was talking about earlier in the conversation about the broken person. There are people that are broken. They don't ever believe that anything ever greater can come out of this. They've lived through several generations of it being weaned out of their DNA that they'll ever have a chance. Meanwhile, you got some people over here that are almost about to go supernova. If they just hear one more time that there are some other individuals that haven't done anything, that keep being abused, then they subject to go ahead and say, can you do it for my friend? Okay, now what is this about? I told you can't meet or interface or connect with the oversoul without either physically catching on fire or sometimes mentally going insane, unless you are going for someone else, because that is your conductor. That is the actual ground. That is the resistor. It basically takes the shock of the initial plug-in. Do you know there's how many thousands of volts coming off of a power line? If you plug your Walkman in there, it'll blow the Walkman all over the freeway, all over the ground, right? So what stops it from doing that in the initial plug-in? A resistor. So what happens is then when the resistor comes in, then you're allowed to take in the amperage that is necessary and in the increments in which you can come online. That's what we're talking about here when we're talking about activation of the human species. But this is something that, seriously making a push at. And it's weird to me because I feel like sometimes I'm in a world that maybe I switch to. Because the strangest thing is that there's only still a few people in retrospect thinking about this. And all the knowledge and the wisdom is available to how to get our species actually into a state of us being able to, like I said, the sky never goes dark. And the reality is it just may be the time that it's happening now. I mean, that's sometimes the greatest things to accept, but also the hardest thing to get over. It's like, would you believe that this happens to be the lifetime where you come into total emancipation? No, because you're broken. But I'm telling you that is a product of a certain altered consciousness, and that state of consciousness is confused. It's confused with determining that Earth was the entire galaxy without ever even seeing what Earth was really about. And that's why when you're dealing with a surrogate mother, which also trained many of our mothers, she's synthetic. She has nursery rhymes. She's Mother Circe's. She's put strong animals to sleep on her doorstep. So what happens is that when we're facing invaders come from inside, not outside. We have parasites in our systems foreign to our body because they would never be in there edgewise, meaning that a human being would not have some of the viruses that we have in our bodies right now as a real human being. We've turned into something else. As I say, is that air you're breathing? And I'll add to that in New York with all these cars running around and methane and gas, and you become something different when you keep taking that in. So compensate for that. Sometimes we just hit ourselves all the time with the hammer, like, bam, what are you doing? Oh, you're stupid. Hey, look, compensate for, look what you're dealing with, human. You're powerful if you're still in this. And this is why, like I said, this second message that I have to bring is more glorious as far as the energy that's circulating through it, because I've already seen this. And I'm just one of those, as a gentleman came from out of nowhere yesterday or day before yesterday to explain to me, and Thomas was here. It was just a crazy occurrence. But the man explained to me that there is an encounter that some of us and many of us have had in history, in different nations, from all the way through Egypt to Gaza to Babylon to wherever. And it's been an encounter with ourselves. And this other self of ours, which we think is an other at first, when attempting to merge with us, sometimes blows our mind. Because it's like, I cannot be that. I cannot be that. And that's the real deal, though. What I'm saying is that that's where this transcends from becoming something that people are just listening to something that they're actually experiencing. So that's what I find my time involved in. If people want to know, well, why is AstroQuest not airing and things like that, it's because we're actually moving into where we can teach teachers. People have these kind of ideas of opening institutes and things like that. They're like communities where everyone basically get on the same grounds and fight with each other. Like, constellations crashing all into each other because she likes certain chants and he doesn't like certain incense and all that kind of stuff. But they never start thinking, why don't we just teach teachers, people who want to come and learn and actually charge themselves up and go back into their reality or their center or wherever they come from and help, not just individuals that always need help. You see what I mean? Because that's what we've been caught up in doing. So I want to give everyone on this line this vision. Then imagine this: you're trying to fix one child at a time, right? And you have to open up the body, you have to open up the diagrams, you have to go through experience, you got to understand everything they're about to formulate some type of solution to their situation, right? This is taking you a lot of time. Then you notice that thousands of children are spawning every minute. Do you keep trying to do one child at a time, or do you realize a way to, what I was laughing about in the studio today, batch convert? Meaning that something designed to where thousands, millions of people can go through it to experience themselves, but not something that's just only honed into a dynamic of people that just listen to True Frequency Radio or listen to AstroQuest because they've had that experience. You start also with the lifestyle. You have to meet the parents when the parents are with the children. You have to design things. Look at iBooks. Look at those programs. They're easy to use. You have to design things that the parent and the child can both participate. Because what is the parent always trying to do with the child? Keep the child quiet from crying. So they throw the TV in front of them, throw a video game. Anything that blinks with lights that has noises, they give it to them. Make something. Make some crystals, shine some lights through it. Give them some chimes. Get them some instruments. Go get the iBooks. Write the curriculum. Like, all this stuff is on my list to do. But I'm telling people, it's DIY. I'm not trying to hold all the secrets in. Take all this information and develop something, and by all means, you'll succeed. I only bought the formula to success, but that doesn't mean that I bought the entities in which need to accomplish it, except for myself. And that's what I think that we all need to see, is that it's how much you want this. But if you do really want it, and if it's in you, by all means, you'll receive it.
Well, thank you so much. That was like, oh, man. Thank you.
Thank you very mumuch for the call, definitely. And Sevan, unfortunately, we only have a couple of minutes left. Anything you'd like to leave the audience with?
I think I said enough today. Just that we're still expanding. Expect to hear something different from me. Like, this has been like 4 or 5 years of this, where, because you remember some of our first shows, Chris? I mean, it's always something different in a sense, but still so connected to all of what we're experiencing. And that's what I was saying about the truth. Like, I think Thomas was saying the other day, he said, but that kind of should happen when you're talking about the truth, right? And yes, that is true.
Absolutely.
So that's the truth on True Frequency Radio today.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your time, Sevan. It has been fascinating. Ladies and gentlemen, kiss the one you love right now. You never know when the last time is going to be. Marshall Masters tomorrow, 2 o'clock Pacific time, right here on Truth Frequency Radio. I've also got some groundbreaking information about a potential false flag. I'm connecting dots. I hope the dots do not connect, but I have a feeling that they do. So tune in tomorrow for that. We love you guys.
With a renegade.